The comma. Traffic signs which signal stop, yield, pedestrian crossings, and so on are vital since they prevent auto drivers from colliding into other drivers. Think about it for a minute. What would it be like if intersections had no traffic signals? Like traffic signs and signals, commas and other punctuation devices are important in helping readers drive through the complex grammatical structures of writing. You should add commas to logical places in your writing so that readers can better understand your ideas. Read these two sentences with, without, and with the comma. Confusing, after we finished the race, started at 5 p.m. Less confusing, after we finished, the race started at 5 p.m. Add a comma to the above example and the meaning is clearer. No longer are we finishing the race, but a different activity when the race begins. Several rules regarding punctuation have developed to prevent such misreadings and to help you logically express your ideas. Rule 1. When in doubt, leave it out. This is probably the most important rule I can give you regarding using commas. It means if you are unsure or not sure about whether or not you should use a comma, don't use it. It's better not to use the comma than to put the comma in the wrong place in the sentence. Rule 2. Use a comma before a coordinating conjunction joining two independent clauses. And, but, or, nor, for, so, and yet. Associative learning involves the association of time sequences, and an example of associative learning is classical conditioning. For writing, you will want to use transitions as well, for they make it easier for the reader to understand how you are organizing your ideas. Exception. If the two independent clauses are short and there is no danger of misreading, you may omit the comma. I shopped, and then my friend visited me. The plane landed, and we sadly left the airport. Rule 3. Use a comma after an introductory word group. Common introductory word groups include clauses and phrases, many of which functions as adverbs signaling when, where, how, why, and under what conditions the main action of the sentence occurred. Other introductory word groups include participial phrases. A comma signals that the introductory word group has ended and the main part of the sentence has begun. To continue our discussion about environmental issues, let's take a look at a very hot issue: leaf blowers. Although he never wavered in his devotion to colonial rights and early committed himself to independence as an unwelcome last resort, Adams' innate conservatism made him determined in 1770 that the British soldiers accused of the Boston Massacre received a fair hearing. Having absolutely no desire to wrestle the stolen merchandise from the shoplifter, the clerk called for security. Exception. If the introductory adverb clause or phrase is short and if there is no danger of misreading, you may omit the comma. At the bank, I saw my friend Tom. Because it rained, the game was postponed until Friday. Rule 4. Use a comma to separate items in a series. When 3 or more items in a series are presented, the items should be separated from one another with commas. Items in a series may include single words, phrases, or clauses. Take a minute and read these 2 sentences. Pay particular attention to the commas. Pause the video. Alright, did you notice that these sentences actually have a slightly different meaning? Let's take a look at each one. My father gave me his property, his houses, and his businesses. In this case, we're talking about one item, property. And then we have an appositive which modifies property, which means houses and businesses. These are all part of the property. In the second example here, my father gave me his property, his houses, and his businesses. We're actually talking about 3 separate things. So be really careful about where you put those commas. It can actually change the meaning, the perception of what you're writing. John had 3 reasons for visiting Kim: to bring closure to the broken relationship, to give her the keys to her Toyota Corolla, and to apologize for his bad behavior. Because Larry was busy with work, because he had a limited income, and because he had prior obligations, he was unable to attend his sister's wedding. Rule 5. Use a comma between coordinate adjectives not joined by an. Do not use a comma between cumulative adjectives. When 2 or more adjectives separately modify a noun, they are considered coordinate. John is a friendly, outgoing, and intelligent student. Adjectives are coordinate because they can be joined with an. Friendly, and outgoing, and intelligent. Adjectives are cumulative when they do not separately modify the noun. 4 large dark figures began moving toward us. In this case, cumulative adjectives cannot be joined by an. For example, you would not say 4 and large and dark. Rather, these adjectives lean on one another, each one modifying a larger word group. For example, dark modifies figures, large modifies dark figures, and 4 modifies large dark figures. Coordinate adjectives. States with severe, unsustainable, unmanageable budget deficits will need government assistance. Cumulative adjectives. After my lunch, I ate a slice of a rich chocolate cake topped with cream cheese frosting. Rule 6. Use commas to set off non-restrictive elements. Do not use commas to set off restrictive elements. Word groups describing nouns or pronouns can be adjective clauses, adjective phrases, and appositives. These word groups can be non-restrictive or restrictive in nature. A restrictive element defines or limits the meaning of the word it modifies. Therefore, it is essential to the meaning of the sentence. Thus, a restrictive element is set off with commas. If you remove the restrictive element from the sentence, the meaning changes dramatically, becoming more general than what was previously intended. Restrictive. The boys need uniforms that are washable. The writer of the example sentence does not mean that boys need uniforms in general. The meaning is much more limited than that. The boys need washable uniforms. A non-restrictive element describes a noun or pronoun whose meaning is already defined or limited. Therefore, it contains non-essential information and should be set off with commas. Non-restrictive. The boys need durable uniforms which are costly. If you remove a non-restrictive element from the sentence, the meaning does not change dramatically. Though some meaning is lost to be sure, the defining characteristic of the uniforms being described remains the same as they were before. The boys need durable uniforms, and these happen to be expensive. It is often difficult to tell if a word group is restrictive or non-restrictive. In these cases, the context and the writer's meaning should be considered. Consider the following two grammatically correct sentences with slightly different meanings. The boys playing soccer at the park are from Arizona. The boys playing soccer at the park are from Arizona. In the example without commas, the writer refers to some of the boys at the park, thereby limiting the meaning to only the ones who are playing soccer. On the other hand, in the example with commas, the writer refers to all the boys at the park, merely adding information to them. Rule 7. Use commas to set off transitional expressions, absolute phrases, and contrasted elements. Transitional expressions. Acting as bridges between sentences or parts of sentences, transitional expressions such as however, therefore, moreover, as a result, and so on are usually set off with commas. If the transitional expression appears between independent clauses, it is preceded by a semicolon and is followed by a comma. Example, migrating white geese seen in southern Quebec are more likely to be greater snow geese, answer Caruculans atlanticus. However, some lesser snow geese travel over the province with the flocks of greater snows, and, along with them, break their migratory flights at Cap Tourmente on the St. Lawrence River. In this example, notice the semicolon after Atlanticus, and notice the comma after however. When the transitional expression appears at the beginning of the sentence, it is usually set off with a comma. A supernova occurs in our galaxy once every 300 years, and in neighboring galaxies, approximately 500 neutron stars have been identified. Therefore, we are quite confident that there should also be some black holes. Notice the comma after therefore. Absolute phrases. An absolute phrase modifies the whole sentence and consists of a noun followed by a participle or a participial phrase. These phrases may appear at the beginning or at the end of a sentence. Whether appearing in the beginning or at the end, these phrases should be set off with commas. The moon rising overhead in a bright glow. The hikers continue to make their ascent of Mount Baldy, so notice the comma Michael Jackson made a profound impact on pop music culture, his records having sold more than 50 million copies. In this case, notice the comma after culture. Contrasted elements. Sharp contrasts such as not, never, unlike are usually set off with commas. Due to the Great Recession, Americans have made financial, not physical, sacrifices in their lives. So notice with the contrasted element you have a comma after financial and you have one after physical. Unlike Americans, the Chinese have financially prospered in recent years. In this case, notice the comma after Americans. Rule 8. Use commas to set off nouns of direct address, the words yes and no, interrogative tags, and mild interjections. Forgive me, Dr. Thompson, for not having completed my research paper by the due date. Yes, you can finish the homework assignment next week. It sure was a beautiful day when we went to the beach, wasn't it? Well, at least he passed the exam. Rule 9. Use commas with expressions such as he said to set off direct quotations. Brent Thompson said, "Make sure that you go to the party on Friday." It is always better to prevent an accident than try to explain why it happened, wrote Police Officer Susan Smith. Rule 10. Use commas with dates, addresses, titles, and numbers. Dates. The year is usually set off from the rest of the sentence with a pair of commas. On December 19, 2010, a new policy was passed in the United States. Addresses. The elements of an address or a place name are separated by commas. However, zip codes are not preceded by commas. Cade Riley was born in Fontana, California in 2007. Send the package to care of Kent Rogers at 13509 Pemberton Avenue, New York City, New York 10097. Titles. If a title follows a name, set it off from the rest of the sentence with a pair of commas. Foxy Sanderson, M.D., has been serving patients in Kentucky since 1999. Numbers. Use commas with numbers with more than 4 digits. Use commas to separate the numbers into groups of 3. 2,500 or 2,500. Commas are optional with numbers with 4 digits. $100,000. 9 million. Rule 10. Use a comma to prevent confusion. If a writer has omitted a word or phrase, a comma may be needed to signal the omission. To make a mistake is normal. To admit it, uncharacteristic. So we've placed the comma here because it should read, to admit it is uncharacteristic. But because we didn't say is, we put the comma right after it. If two words echo each other, a comma may be needed for ease of reading. All of the problems that we thought would occur occurred. In some cases, a comma is needed to prevent readers from grouping words which do not match the writer's intended meaning. Anyone who can walk to and from work every day for exercise.